She arrived at the cafe just as the evening sky turned a soft shade of lavender, the city lights beginning to twinkle like distant stars. She maneuvered her wheelchair carefully along the polished wooden floor, the familiar squeak of the wheels echoing softly in the otherwise quiet space. The hostess had smiled politely, guiding her to a cozy corner table by the window. She settled herself, adjusting her blanket over her legs, and allowed herself a small sigh of relief. Finally, a chance to enjoy a quiet evening. Her heart had been hopeful when she agreed to this date, but as the minutes ticked by, that hope began to waver. The chair across from her remained empty, the promise of company dissolved into the hum of other diners chatting and laughing. Every so often, she glanced at the entrance, a flutter of anticipation rising and falling with each new face that walked through the door. But none of them were him. A dull ache started to creep into her chest, not from physical discomfort, but from the sting of abandonment. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup as if drawing warmth from it, but the heat did little to soothe the growing loneliness. Just as the ache of loneliness began to weigh heavily on her, the cafe door swung open, and a small gust of evening air swept inside. She instinctively turned her head, hoping, as she always did, for someone familiar. Her eyes caught a man entering with quiet confidence, tall and impeccably dressed, exuding the kind of presence that made people notice without him demanding attention. And clinging to his hand was a little boy, no more than 6, whose wide, curious eyes scanned the room before settling on her. Something in that instant stirred a flicker of hope inside her chest. The man's gaze met hers, calm and discerning, and she felt, almost instinctively, that he understood her situation before a single word was exchanged. He took measured steps toward her, his posture relaxed but purposeful, as though he had come with intent, not just to be present, but to make a difference in the moment. The little boy tugged gently at his father's hand, whispering something inaudible, but his eyes never left her. His small wave was hesitant at first, then brimming with excitement as she responded with a shy, surprised smile. The man reached her table and crouched slightly to meet her at eye level, his voice soft but commanding enough to cut through the cafe's background chatter. "You shouldn't be sitting here alone," he said, a gentle warmth underpinning his words. There was no pity in his tone, only recognition and understanding, and it wrapped around her like a comforting blanket. She blinked, unsure if she should feel relief, gratitude, or embarrassment, but the tension in her shoulders began to ease slightly. As the evening settled into a gentle rhythm, the three of them found an easy flow in their conversation. The little boy, Oliver, was full of energy and curiosity, pointing out the details of the cafe that most adults would overlook, the way the light bounced off the polished wooden floor, the tiny cracks in the brick wall that gave the space character, and the playful steam patterns rising from the freshly poured coffees. Each observation sparked laughter from her, soft and tentative at first, then more genuine as the warmth of their presence began to sink in. The billionaire listened carefully, his sharp eyes occasionally glancing at her to gauge her reactions, ensuring she felt included rather than ignored. "He's very observant," he said with a small smile, nodding toward Oliver. "Almost like he notices things we all miss." There was no condescension in his tone, just sincere admiration, and she felt a surprising sense of belonging in the moment. For once, she wasn't being defined by her wheelchair, the limitations she had come to accept. She was simply a person, able to share a laugh, a thought, or a story. Oliver, sensing her engagement, leaned closer and began to tell a story about a drawing he had made earlier that day. She listened, captivated not just by the tale, but by the way this small human, untouched by cynicism, saw the world with such unguarded wonder. The billionaire's attention never wavered from them, his presence steady and protective, offering small words of encouragement, laughter, or gentle corrections when needed. For her, the shift was profound. Where minutes earlier there had been silence, loneliness, and a gnawing ache in her chest, now there was connection, laughter, small smiles, and the comforting rhythm of being part of a dialogue that didn't require her to prove herself or apologize for her vulnerability. The evening was drawing to a close, but the warmth at her table refused to fade. Oliver reached out, taking her hand in his small, warm palm. "I like you," he said simply, with the unfiltered honesty only a child could offer. His innocence was like a gentle balm, easing away the anxiety she hadn't realized she had been carrying. She smiled, her voice a whisper, but full of feeling. "I like you too, Oliver." That single exchange, simple as it was, bridged the gap between her isolation and the joy she had nearly forgotten existed. When it was finally time to leave, the billionaire helped her maneuver her wheelchair toward the exit, and Oliver ran ahead, glancing back with a wave that made her heart ache with both joy and the tiniest pang of goodbye. As she stepped out into the cool evening air, the city lights reflecting on the wet pavement, she realized how much a single act of attention and care could transform her night. The loneliness that had seemed permanent, almost defining, had been replaced by warmth, laughter, and human connection. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly seen, not for what she couldn't do, but for who she was.